Speaking of females in the music scene, it's obvious, everybody knows that metal came from a sausage fest, okay? Metal was made by men for men because we have this incessant nagging thing called testosterone. This testosterone demon, uh, you know, beats our brow every day, every night since puberty sets in, and we are forced to pillage and rage and destroy and build and conquer and pillage in any way possible. And in modern times, how we chose to divert this incessant nagging energy is to create metal. That is how metal was born, because testosterone forced us to do it. Okay? We do not have a choice. Men do not have a choice when it comes to their DNA. Okay, the DNA tells the brain and the body what to do, what to think, and how to go about it at all times. We are vessels. This is how we came to, for better or worse, the empire of metal. Since the dawn of electricity and guitars combined, we found a way. It was all, there was women involved, of course. There's some legends that are not nearly spoken of. I don't even know their names because they weren't the vast majority. Women have testosterone too, at different levels, just like men have at different levels. And we're all a jumbled mess, but we're talking majority. The majority of men have this testosterone issue, and that's why it's mostly men talked about in legendary tales of the blues. It was a back and forth between the oceans. We got to experience things like Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, Black Sabbath, UFO, ACDC from Australia, and so it went. And what was the main uh, protagonist? It was men. We wanted the sound. We went forth and never stopped trying to achieve bigger, louder, more distortion, more macabre, more satanic, or more, experimental, more psychedelic. Every possible offshoot, off we went to the races. And then later on, it just kept evolving, and it kept branching out, new genres, new everything, and it was all driven by testosterone. Very, very few women were involved in the process that we can think of. We had Jefferson Airplane, I don't know, Mama Kaz. um, we had the Runaways later in the 70s with Joan Jett, Lita Ford. Lita Ford became a bit more heavy metal solo artist. Joan Jett just kept being kind of like pop rock. But I think that's where women belong. Their true voices just lend themselves towards more pop sounds, more like rock. That's where they really shine. Bands like Blondie. Blondie sounds great. ABBA, well, they're kind of like rock pop too, but they had the women in the voices and it fit that category. But when women try to branch over to metal, there's no problem with them being musicians. But when they lend their voice is not tailored towards, uh, just sonically pleasing aesthetics for heavy metal, because heavy metal is just too manly. Like it needs a manly voice. When women try to sing like Doro, for example, it's okay. We can admire her, we can give her our money, but let's not kid ourselves. Doro is not like the end all be all. Like she's never achieved major success for the same reason that her voice is that of a female, and it just does not conduce towards, really uh, the majority of fans of heavy metal, which are men. It just doesn't lend itself to be embraced by that demographic. And it's not sexist. Okay, it's not for any other reason that it just simply does not vibe well. It just doesn't mix properly. And of course, there's going to be women that are going to be crying. They're going to be saying, "You're a misogynist, you're a sexist," just because you have a plain perspective of the facts of what it is. The only female that really I felt, and not just me, it's just it's a fact that Wendy O. Williams from the Plasmatics, she achieved what no other female had done up to her point, and she integrated well, and everybody loves the Plasmatics. Well, everybody from my age, I guess, and they she sounded amazing because she had such a unique, raspy, and just forceful voice that it's not typical of a female, and that's why she stands out above basically anybody else. She was way more respected than Doro, even though Doro is beloved, especially in Europe, because she's from Germany and she's pretty or whatever, and a blonde bombshell. She looks good on stage, but like for me, like I never want to listen to freaking Doro. I've heard it and I've seen the videos. I'm like, yeah, okay, it's traditional heavy metal. Don't really care about it. I care about except that it's like traditional heavy metal, but because the voice it fits and the guitarist do something more interesting than Doro's guitarist. I never heard anything really stand out from Doro, music wise. But you have to have all the elements to stand out. Not just because you're a female, oh, I'm going to be all over it because I love women. No. If I'm going to listen to music, it really has to grab you, right? And that's the problem when you have a female singer. Now, any other female singers in metal, I can't even think about it. Like, the only other one that stood out to me in the 80s was Sabina Klassen from Holy Moses. And she had more like a growly, like a grunty Cookie Monster vocals, and she did it well. But and the guitarists, the songwriters were pretty good too. But only like maybe one album, which I think was the New Machine of Liechtenstein. That they had a video for the song called Panic, amazing, underrated, and vastly unknown in America or in South America. Uh, I don't even remember how I came across them, but I think it was just exploring YouTube and I got lucky. So they weren't really heavily promoted. They're not a big band. And now for everybody else that has a female vocalist, there's simply it never nothing ever grabbed me in the metal realm. Speaking of even modern bands like Burning Witches, which has what's that girl from the Maidens? She Cox something, Courtney Cox. She's an amazing guitar player, and she's like really pretty too. But I listen to their music, and the singer, for me, ruins the music. It doesn't allow me to want to deep dive into their discography or anything because the vocals, they're not bad, but they're also very generically, female, where you can tell it's just a female trying the best that she can to fit into that world, and it just does not jive. It's not misogyny. It's just it doesn't compute. Plain and simple. Uh, every other female out there currently, like what's her name, Scavia, Christina Scavia, or Scabbies, whatever. Again, the music doesn't jive, and female vocals just don't. To me, bands like Epica, Nightwish, etc., they all sound incredibly boring. they sound like Celine Dion metal. There's nothing worse than being referred to as Celine Dion in music, because that's just the death of that genre or that band, whatever. Like power metal or symphonic metal, to me, all that shit is not worth it. It doesn't register at all. And hooray for the people that like it. Hooray for the females that like the female singers. Okay, there's people, there's an audience for that. But as for me and my manly points of view and perspectives of the metal genre, it does not matter at all. And it to me, it's actually kind of embarrassing that they're kind of lumped in with the metal genre. And then the rest of the modern female singers, they try to all do like either uh, Cookie Monster vocals, which are like a huge turn off for me. They're just so easy to do. Sure, it takes a bit of practice, and you need stamina for that, and whatever. It does. I don't care. It even comes from men. It doesn't matter to me either, because okay, they could sound more forceful than a female, but it's still just so easily, so generic, so lazy to do. Like back in the day, we had people trying to do Cookie Monster vocals, but they sounded unique. Like, for example, Chuck Schuldiner. His vocals are unique, even though they are Cookie Monster. But that's what needs to happen if you're going to stand out. And in today's world, everybody's just so lazy with their singers, and maybe they're afraid to stand out, or they don't want to stand out because they might be dismissed for even attempting to not sound like every other generic Cookie Monster vocalist that exists out today. So the reason I say all this crap is because I got flagged on my Reddit account for stating a simple fact, and that was that females generally simply do not belong in metal because it's not a female driven, testosterone fueled genre. And of course, that sounds bad, but it's just a plain truth. Women just do not fit in for the most part with metal. Yes, they can do it. There's female musicians, and they're drummers, bass players, guitarists. It's fine. But when they start trying to sing and blend in, it just doesn't work. It there are fans of them, and there will be, but as a general rule, it just doesn't jive well. And that is my perspective, and it's not a misogynistic take on a vulnerable community, as Reddit says. It's just a matter of a fact, historical, biological, genetics, testosterone wise. It just does not fit well. It does not bode well. It can exist, but if somebody actually just states the fact that, for the most part, women just simply don't belong as vocalists in the metal genre, and it's a metal genre it was made by men for men. Okay, that is the general rule, and it's just a rule, and you can sidestep it, you can break it, like Judas Priest says, you can break the laws, but the general consensus is unanimous. Females, for the most part, cannot fit in properly. They are a minority in the metal genre, and it's not trying to step on them or to keep them down. Women in general, their body simply does not condone metal. For them, it's anti-female. The sounds of aggression, of testosterone, of rage, horror and Satanism and all that dark shit, loud stuff, goes against their very principles, within their DNA. There are creatures that create life. They create human beings. What they mostly adhere to is safe spaces, you know, love, serenity, calmness, nature, you know, rainbows and puppies and everything that's soft and cuddly and safe, away from war, away from monsters and raging lunatics. Okay, that is just a fact of biology. And this is why it is a plain fact to say this. It's not misogyny, and there's, of course, women vary, within themselves. There's girls that are more aggressive, there's tomboys, there's lesbians, and then there's really the vast majority are girly girls. And that what do they really innately, just instinctively flock to? They support things like Taylor Swift, Katy Perry, Justin Bieber. The biggest artists on the planet are the biggest artists because women flock to this, like pop, romantic, non-threatening music that sings about happy stuff or romance or heartbreak, dramatic soap opera stuff. Not, they're not interested in watching a documentary about World War II. Okay, they're not interested in the savagery of man. But for the most part, in general, you have your Taylor Swifts, your Beyonce, and your pop music, and your Celine Dion. All that crap is highly, highly regarded for by women. Okay, that is music made by women for women. So, and to say like, if a man is gonna join those ranks, they have to be kind of like a Justin Bieber, a very cute, very docile, very sweet guy that sings about, you know, unthreatening things, that women latch onto, and that is the vast difference between the genders. So it's not misogynistic. It's just a fact, a biological fact, and people should be allowed to state facts. Okay, not state hate, because I'm not stating hate by saying that women in general do not belong in metal, and therefore that's why most female-fronted bands don't really make it. They make it, but they don't really make it. There's no real iconic, huge status band that is fronted by a female, like like Black Sabbath, let's say, like Dio, Judas Priest, Metallica, Iron Maiden, Nirvana, whatever, you know, Alice in Chains. What female uh, in that genre? What female fronted band is huge, iconic? I can't think of one, and that is because it's a genre by men for men. So please stop with this misogynistic accusation bullshit and just think, you know, in facts, in historical, biological, and just factual facts. Stop getting triggered and stop reporting people when they say just obvious things that are just true, just because you want to be offended by reality. That's not how life is supposed to work. Anyways, that's all I gotta say. Oh, whoever reported me on Reddit, I'm coming after you, okay?